Welcome to the WrestleTalk News. I'm Pete Quinnell. It's Ollie's favourite time of the year because WWE filed their quarterly report to the SEC, and among its usual numbers and business, there were also some very interesting details in the legal section of the filing. As well as mentioning the ongoing lawsuit with MLW, the filing noted that while their own special committee within WWE finished their investigations into Vince McMahon's allegations of misconduct in the fourth quarter of 2022, governmental investigations remain ongoing. The filing then mentions that on July 17th, 2023, federal law enforcement agents executed a search warrant and served a federal grand jury subpoena on Mr. McMahon. No charges were said to have been brought forward due to these investigations. Both Vince and WWE have now issued statements to CNBC, with Vince's saying, "I have always denied any intentional wrongdoing and continue to do so. I am confident that the government investigation will be resolved without any findings of wrongdoing." John Pollock of Post Wrestling reported that Vince also made an internal statement to the rest of WWE and its staff, which said mostly the same thing, continuing to say that the internal investigation concluded late last year and he denied any wrongdoing. It had also been reported recently that Vince McMahon underwent back surgery, which brought about some question marks as to his role within WWE, and we now have a little more info on that. In the same SEC filing, it was mentioned that Vince had undergone this surgery and was now on medical leave as of July 21st, and would remain on medical leave until further notice. What this means for his influence backstage on week-to-week creative remains to be seen, because this is Vince we're talking about. I don't think he knows what time off actually means. Women's wrestling has been a big topic of conversation lately, with more vocal criticism of AEW's booking, as well as WWE's decision to seemingly remove 2 women's matches from SummerSlam. Dynamite last night had a women's world title match as the main event. Ollie's going to have his review here shortly, but there still seems to be some unrest in WWE. One of the 2 matches that was reportedly penciled in for the show, but now doesn't seem to be happening, was Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez, and Rhea may now have shown how she feels about that decision, as she's liked a tweet saying, "Treat your women better. Simple," with screenshots attached of Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch being annoyed about their exclusion on the SummerSlam card. Rhea also liked another tweet that said that Rhea has every right to be upset about not being on the card. So it seems pretty conclusive. And while not everyone can get on the SummerSlam card, of course, it does seem odd that there's no match for Rhea's belt or the biggest women's star in WWE right now. But someone who has made their way onto the card is LA Knight, who'll be competing in the SummerSlam Battle Royale, which I presume is for fun? There's been question marks over Knight's status in WWE and whether he will actually ever be pushed or not, despite the crowd reactions he's been getting. There's another update from PW Insider, who report that Knight's booking is all by design and that WWE execs are super high on him. They're just waiting for the right time to pull the trigger. They've even reportedly gone as far as to praise him for breaking out of the mold of the character he'd been presented with, which, if you think about it for a second, means they knew that Max Dupree was a bad character. WWE, everyone. However, Worked Wrestling on Twitter added to this, saying, "We can add that there are parties worried that the company won't strike while the iron is hot and momentum will fade, as they've done with some in the past." What? No! WWE would never! And now over to Ollie for the Dynamite review.
It's Thursday, 3.84 years after this show debuted. You know what that means. It's time for my review of the 200th episode of AEW Dynamite in about 5 minutes. Sammy Guevara took on his mentor Cody Rhodes, remember him, on the first ever Dynamite almost 4 years ago. Here, he took on his newer wrestling daddy, Chris Jericho, tagging with Daniel Garcia against Chris and Takeshita to open the show. That carny piece of S-word, Don Callis interfered, but mostly always behind Jericho's back. There was no plausible deniability for the finish though, when Garcia had his Dragon Tamer submission on Chris and Don knocked Garcia out with the baton behind the referee's back. Jericho looked annoyed initially. This wasn't what he wanted to do to his boys. But he made the cover anyway, putting him one step closer to joining the Don's family. Afterwards, Daddy Magic kept up his excellent serious delivery and called a mandatory JAS meeting for next week, where we'll presumably have Jericho's final decision, which somehow leads him to being booked against Will Ospreay in one of the top matches at All In. Speaking of All In segue, Tony Khan promoted All In later this month in Wembley, in what will be the biggest era of AEW yet. This queued up a montage of some of the promotion's best moments over its 200 episodes. What an incredible run. From January 2020 to March 2022. But as is the life cycle of any wrestling promotion post The Invasion, you'll eventually want to do an ECW original storyline. Jerry Lynn said he couldn't whoop Perry's ass himself because A, all the screws in his neck, and 2, that'd be called child abuse, so he got someone else to commit the child abuse for him. Rob Van Dam! Side note, child abuse should be Christian's faction name. RVD's secret source of weed, yoga, and weed means he's 52 years young, springing into sudden life by ducking a Perry chair shot and swinging his own heel kick counter. Perry ran into the crowd and used a young girl as a shield. They were booked for an FTW title match next week. The RVD surprise is fun, but I'd had my fill of ECW storylines about 13 years ago. And what's happened to Hook? Trent pinned Penta in the following Anything Goes match with Jon Moxley, with some supremely fun hardcore action reminiscing the best parts of the pandemic era, like the 5-star parking lot brawl, suplexes outside through tables, an avalanche destroyer through a table, all the thumbtacks, and the final sequence of moves and near falls was terrific. After Trent got his win back from being pinned by Penta last week, Mox immediately embraced him from behind. Oh no, wait, no. No, he's choking him. He's choking him to death! This prompted a Best Friends vs Blackpool Combat Club brawl, which saw the faces stand tall to challenge Mox and Claudio to a parking lot fight on Rampage. No, Tony! Collision! Collision's the show going against SummerSlam! That's on Saturday, not Friday! Many were calling for MJF to be a face when he returned last September. The crowd wanted to cheer him, and the company suddenly found itself missing all its top faces after Brawl Out. I understood the reasoning, but I never agreed. Character-wise, Max back then was still a heel. Turning him would have been needs-driven, not organically from character. A year later, though, the timing is perfect, and it's no coincidence that time and patience has created one of the most over acts in wrestling. After embracing Cole at the end of their Collision tag on Saturday, MJF cut a full-on babyface promo, once again recalling his villain origin story of having quarters thrown at him in high school and how that made him believe everyone else in this world is evil. He has to stab others in the back before they can do it to him. But in trying to protect himself, he became the very scumbag he hated. Getting people to hate him is easy, he said, in potentially a meta commentary on performing as a heel or face. Being honest is hard. But he's not scared anymore, and he's ready to be the fan scumbag. He's a scumbag. He called out Adam Cole and booked not just any title match, but the title match for Wembley or All In. Throughout this entire segment, I was waiting for Max to turn on Cole or Cole to turn on Max. But they just embraced and smiled at the end. This isn't just an incredible storyline, it's another brilliant MJF subversion of a wrestling trope. Can they coexist? Yeah, and they become stronger for it. Speaking of stronger segue. I'm talking about Roderick Strong. It appears the antagonistic force will be Roderick Strong, teaming with the Kingdom, who trashed a backstage area in jealousy. Of course, everyone was most looking forward to the 200th episode for the dream in-ring encounter, decades in the making, of Kenny Omega versus Jeff Jarrett. But this guy was more into the idea of Generation Me meeting their maker. Jarrett's TNA booked Max and Jeremy Buck so badly, it forced them to take indie wrestling into their own hands. In many ways, Jeff Jarrett is the real cause and founder of AEW. The trios match was typically fun, complete with patented TNA overbooking, involving Sonjay, Karen, the Hardy Boys for some reason, and a wild Hangman Page from out of nowhere all getting involved. The Elite won and then announced they've signed long-term with AEW and are looking forward to the next 200 episodes. We'll see them on Dynamite, Rampage, ROH, heck, even Collision. And like that, an unacknowledged rift at the heart of the promotion, and my own, felt like it started to close. Just like how I felt something go off-kilter when Tony Khan announced he'd bought ROH, from which I still believe you can trace a through line of diluting the product and splitting attention from managing backstage personnel issues. I felt something resolve itself here. I think and hope we'll look back on this milestone episode and see this as the true start of AEW's return to full strength. Kenny referencing Collision makes me think this is the long-term build to The Elite versus CM Punk. The recently emboldened Mogul affiliates, which now includes AR Fox, got an excellent video package, which saw them invade the Buddy Wayne Academy to beat everyone up, smashing a father and son photo frame over Nick Wayne's head, and calling Darby Allin on the phone to let him know what they'd done. This was an intense, awesome angle. Aussie Open successfully defended their ROH tag titles against Vikingo and Commander in a fun, if slightly sloppy, Styles Clash match. It's great to see Mark Davis, no relation, back in the ring. And for the main event, it turns out Tony Khan does read fan signs. Quick, someone make a Jeff Jarrett World Champion poster. Shida and Toni Storm closed the show, where Shida shockingly won the Women's Championship for a second time. A wonderful, emotional victory, as Shida's first run was in front of 0 fans over the pandemic. Now she'll get to hold the belt in front of what might be the most fans at a show ever in wrestling history, outside North Korea, in Wembley. The finish was excellent, playing on the Outcasts' usual template of interference wins, but Shida kicked out of a spray paint in the face and the Storm Zero in an amazing near fall. And then she won. What a moment. However, book the women's division better. What does that mean to you? If it means sudden title change in a very high-profile slot, great. Let's be optimistic. But I've been optimistic about women's division follow-ups for 200 shows, and I've been disappointed every time. I'm at the same place with AEW women's division booking as I was with NXT call-ups in 2019. No matter how exciting the debut felt, I was conditioned to know there'd be no follow-up. There was no substantial storyline here. Shida didn't come down with a Willow Nightingale or a Sky Blue despite them being on the same side previously and the Outcasts being there in full force. Never felt like this was a culmination of this 6-month-long Outcasts versus AEW original storyline, which was there to be told. Maybe this was always the plan, but it really did come across like a knee-jerk reaction to AEW's poor booking of the women's division over the last 2 weeks. A very heartwarming and well-deserved moment, but I'll reserve judgment for if this is the sign of actual change for a couple of months. This week's AEW Dynamite is 86%. It's SummerSlam this weekend. Watch mine and Luke's prediction for every WWE star at that show in 3 words or less. Fewer. Flying kick! Yeah!